And it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Martin Willis, your host. And today we have a good show. We have, the first hour, we have Mark Richfield. He's sitting in for Dave Cote, who says he has too much on his plate at the last minute. And this is about a UFO detection system, a satellite called CubeSat. It's an Indiegogo project. We're going to be talking about that. And in hour two, or somewhere around there, we're going to be having Preston Dennett on, and he's going to be talking about his book, UFOs over Nevada. And great guy. It'll be fun to talk to him. You can call in or you can jump in the chat room at podcastufo.com. The call-in number, 603-967-4030. Wait till we have our guests, though, if you would. Thank you for supporting the show. If you do, you can listen to the whole show for just $1 or more a month. And you may want to jump into that because January 1st, the minimum's going up to $2 a month. And we may be adding another show. It's going to be totally separate from this show. It's going to be on other topics, some paranormal, and just a big variety. And that will be airing, I do believe, on Friday night on the Dark Matter Digital Network. I don't have that confirmed yet, but also that will be available free to anyone that subscribes. It's not going to be available on the podcast, but it'll be anyone that subscribes can pick it up with the other podcast. So that is enough blabbing for me. And what is going on, Alejandro?
Not mucho. Well, I shouldn't say that. A whole lot is going on. So lots of stuff.
Good.
Too much stuff to go into a whole thing. You know one thing that's going on?
What?
Real estate. Did I tell you I'm doing real estate?
Yeah. I'm really excited.
So if you're in Arizona, go to eastvalleyproperty.com. That's right, eastvalleyproperty.com to meet all of your real estate needs.
I'll let you get that plug in. That's good. Hey, yeah, and the properties, there's some good deals out there. And, boy, this time of year, it's a nice place to be.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot going on, so it depends on the area. So, you could have a city where everything's going well, but your neighborhood's not for one reason or another. So it takes some analysis to figure out, how the market's going in your particular area.
Oh, by the way, I'm in my new studio. This is my new studio that I've worked on. I've got new equipment in here. I hope it sounds a little better.
Wow, it sounds great.
It should for
you were sounding good before, though.
Yeah, but now it's nice and quiet. There won't be any dog in the background or other noises. However, there could be squirrel noise now and then. I have, we've talked about the squirrel issues I have. Some people winterize. I have to squirrelarize, or whatever you want to call it. They're doing everything in their little squirrel world to get inside buildings here. They really are.
But, I think that adds charm. Like, rest in peace, my beautiful little Chihuahua. Aww. She is no longer with us. But we used to be fun when I would do this from my house, and she would be barking in the background or something, or she would come jump on me, and I had to tell her to chill out or something. It's
the
kind
dog in the background
when you have all this other stuff going on.
Well, I was doing a show a little while ago, and my Chihuahua also. Great dog. And all of a sudden he had like this nightmare on the bed. He was laying on my bed, had a nightmare in the middle of the show. So, yeah. So, anyway, but I've got this nice little cubby hole in the back. It's not quite finished, but it's nice and cozy and quiet. So that's where I am now.
Cool.
Yeah. So what is happening?
this is kind of, can I share another story?
Sure, yeah, why not? Yeah.
Well, some people, you and I tried to do a show for my show on Monday, and I had technical difficulties, and it didn't work out, which was very unfortunate. And thank you so much for taking the time. That's really frustrating. So I didn't have a show this week. I will have one next week, and it's going to be Dave Cote, who you couldn't get. But then again, you're getting Dave Cote's buddy, who's also part of the project. This guy may be better than Dave Cote, so we don't know.
You don't know. Yeah, that was kind of frustrating. You and I had a really good show for an hour and a half, and the recorder didn't work.
Which is frustrating. But one of the things that I talked about was my visit to NASA Johnson Space Center. And this was for The Martian. So Fox actually flew me out for a press event that they were doing for The Martian to announce the DVD release, which they've announced, which in a few weeks they're going to have the DVD available. If you haven't seen the movie, it's awesome. But, of course, we got to do lots of cool stuff. If you want to hear all the details, you can go to my Facebook page at Alejandro Rojas, and I posted a bunch of pictures. You could see what I did there. But, of course, what pertaining to UFOs, to get to the point, was I did get to ask some questions, a couple people questions about UFOs. Not a whole lot. Of course, I'm there with other press. They were all really cool people, mainstream press. What's funny is many might not realize, and I think I've mentioned this, when you go visit the Huffington Post office. Have you done that yet?
No, never have.
Yeah,
but in New York City.
Yeah. So if you ever go to New York City, Lee Spiegel, go visit. You can go visit him. Well, some people. You can, Martin. But,
he's a good guy. Yeah.
And the offices, you'll notice everybody's really young. So writers these days, because journalism, I actually went to school for journalism, and I didn't go into journalism because it doesn't pay well. And these are all really young 20-somethings. So a lot of these journalists, even in the science writers that I was with, were younger. Not all of them. But that also makes it fun because I like to, they're more fun to talk to and stuff like that. But anyway, I don't know why I went off on that tangent, to be honest. But I guess that it's not that as stuffy as you may think. And you'll see some of the reporters in the pictures that I posted. But there was a PR lady. One of the places we got to go was the mock facility. And essentially, this is where mock vehicles facility, where they have mock-ups of the vehicles where the astronauts can test. And we got to go in. We got to interview the head of the Orion space capsule or an engineer and a lot of stuff like this. But there was a PR lady who was kind of walking us around, several PR people. But there's a lady in particular who let me take some pictures and, walk back because they were kind of hurting us. We weren't supposed to go places we weren't supposed to go. And we had.
Did you say they were hurting you?
With her. Yeah, they were hurting us.
No,
not hurting.
Not hurting.
Not like pain.
But, okay.
But like cattle, making sure we didn't.
All right,
stray.
just wanted to make sure. Because it can turn into a probing story or something.
It's an important clarification.
Yeah.
But I started to ask her, did you see this story about Scott Kelly and this picture he took, and it was, mistaken as a UFO, but it made so much press, and especially these UK tabloids. And she said, that they are aware of those stories. They are frustrating in that they have a lot of cool stuff going on, so it's frustrating when these stories get out. And I guess what we talked about and what I felt was particularly interesting about this Scott Kelly picture is all you had to do was lighten the picture and you could see it was part of the station. Forbes has done a story, which you and I have talked about, which clarified everything that happened. And we had that in our UFO report on Friday. But it was kind of interesting. She said that, they often do not respond, but it is sort of a case where they don't want to acknowledge some of these stories that are silly. And I don't think UFOs are silly, obviously. I don't think looking for UFOs and NASA pictures and images is silly. I even encourage people to, like in our Open Minds News Facebook page, to post pictures if they see something weird so we can all talk about them. And even if it comes out to be something mundane, that's okay. But you know what? These stories are silly. These recent ones, or a lot of them, these press pick up on because they don't do their due diligence to do any investigation. And often the people who post these pictures immediately claim them to be alien in nature without having any research. So that's what frustrates them, and that's why they don't like to acknowledge some of these stories. And I can see their point because it becomes kind of a boy who cried wolf thing. When the media comes to them, or some, kind of fringe media, even if I were at Open Minds to come to them, they've got this bad taste in their mouth already from these stories that were not well researched and these assumptions were made. So then their knee-jerk reaction is to not take these stories seriously. So it kind of showed me how lots of these stories do serious research in this area, harm in that it does damage our access to, serious NASA.
But let me just ask you this. Mm-hmm. Would they ever respond to something? For instance, going back to the Johnson Space Center, back in 2000, there was Donna, I'm trying to remember what her name was, Donna Hare, I believe it was, whistleblower type, came forward and said that they were, Donna Hare, that they were editing out images in NASA. This is someone that was a contractor there in Building 8. And, so what about something like that? Would they actually answer to these things anyway?
I don't know. I don't work at NASA.
But you mentioned to her, they don't take these things seriously, but do they take anything seriously when it comes to UFOs?
Well, I don't know if they've been asked that question, and they have commented before on so I'm sure they do take something seriously, but typically NASA-related stories have not panned out. And, of course, there are at least a couple of cases I can think of. That one you're referring to. Of course, she said she was told this by someone, and, it was kind of a secondhand thing. There was another Disclosure Project witness who said he actually worked there and saw stuff. So I'm not sure if they've been approached with those stories, and that would be interesting to ask. But and I don't know that they've commented on those. So, but who knows if they've been approached on those and approached in a serious manner. Mm-hmm. They have a lot to do. One of the things with this visit is just the immensity of the work they have before them. And that was another thing they said. They're so focused on what they do, they don't even have time to pay attention to the press or what's going on. I asked the astronaut, Drew Fustel, who we got to interview, about this too. And he said, you know what, to be completely honest, before you mentioned, the first time I heard about this picture that you're talking about was when you mentioned it just a minute ago.
Wow.
I don't even know that story. But he's like, I don't know any story. Even when you guys ask me about, and it's true, he did answer these questions this way. When people said, do you think The Martian is doing well? Do you think the movie is helping NASA? Do you think the public? And he's like, I don't know. I'm too busy focused on my job.
Wow.
I don't know what's going on with the public or what the public's talking to. So I have to ask you back. I don't know. What do you think? You would know better than I would. So he as an astronaut is just unaware. But we interviewed, the lady in charge of the food, who's a chemist, and she's, her full attention is the science around the food. The guy who is an engineer for the Orion capsule, of course, he's trying to get his capsule ready so they can take people to Mars in the 2040s is their goal.
Wow. That's great that you get to actually speak to these people. Amazing.
So they're really busy. They're really focused on their jobs.
Must have been a really fun experience. I was at Goddard a while ago, and this past July, I think it was, and that was really, really exciting to be in to see what's going on behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. I had a nice tour of Goddard.
Yeah, I think this is all really interesting. Of course, one of my mentors in the UFO field is John Schuessler, who was one of the founders of MUFON. He was a director for a period of time.
Nice guy.
Yeah, great guy. And he worked for NASA as a contractor, and he would do brown bag lunches at NASA, at Johnson Space Center, and talk about UFOs. So, interacting with him and others, I don't get a sense that they're that a lot of these guys just are knowledgeable or interested. They're like most of the rest of the public. They're focused on their own jobs and what they do, so they don't have time to look at anything else. And they would need to be given something extraordinary in order to do so. Even John himself, it was a hobby on the side. Obviously, he was interested, but some of the people inside who have an interest, I don't get the sense of this major conspiracy of secrecy that, some people believe exists. Even, if you look at some of the great cases out there, it's more there. You hear more about the Air Force taking material and then you never hearing about it than you do, I think, of anyone else.
All right. So what else is happening?
What else is happening? Other than that, we've got a few other UFO stories on the site, of course, luckily, because I've been so busy with the UFO Congress that I have not been able to write much. I want to write about my experience and, my discussion that we just talked about with the NASA guys, and I will, but Roger Marsh, luckily, from MUFON has a couple of really great stories out there right now. We posted one that is a video of just a point of light, but the witness says they saw a cylinder UFO. But one of them that I think is really interesting is this sphere in Texas. This is a witness who says on November 22nd, 2015, at 8 a.m., he saw this sphere that had a green laser kind of light. Looked like it was searching for something on the ground. So this guy became, scared that it was going to come close to him. Then it flew away very quickly. But a really weird story of this orb, scanning the ground. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, wasn't it like 8 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, 8 a.m. in the morning.
So it was a daytime, and he could the beam of light was so bright that he could actually see it during the day, which really that's wild.
I guess it's probably bright enough there by 8 a.m. It might still be dark there.
Well, that's true.
8 a.m.
Sure. This story kind of leads me into something I wanted to talk about real quickly, and that is the wonderful, excellent documentary film that you have on the Allagash incident. It's in our show notes. You can see it there. It's on openminds.tv as well. But what a great job that was. And I watched it last night. It was really good.
Thank you. But you deserve some credit because, I had met these guys years ago at a UFO Congress before we took it over. And I thought they were amazing. I got to hang out with them and talk with them. I thought it was great. It's been one of my favorite stories for years. So it was cool when we were able to coordinate some interviews and get them at the conference. You were luckily able to get me back in contact with a couple of them. And Michael Klein, our video director of videography, our videographer here at Open Minds, he deserves a ton of credit because he spent months putting this together, and it's a free documentary. It plays, I think, as a really good documentary.
Yep, it's like 44 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
And
so,
yeah.
I love it because these guys get to tell their story in their own words. You get to see their faces and their reactions. They're so natural. These are just down-to-earth guys. I think it's a great telling of the story. So we're extremely happy to be able to get this out there so people can know this story because it's a really important one. Mm-hmm. And, so this was a big deal for us to put this together and get it out. And so thank you so much. I'm glad you like it. We've gotten a lot of great feedback. This is free that we put out there. A lot of people complain we should put everything out there for free. And we try. We put a lot of stuff out there for free. I mean, we put more free stuff out there on UFOs than you're going to find anywhere else. But none of this is free. We spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars on our conference. And and we don't make money overall at this. So it's some of those people who complain, quite frankly, how much money have you spent on this field? If we weren't charging like maybe $5 for you to watch some of this stuff, then we wouldn't be able to do it at all. It just wouldn't happen at all. So in order to make this happen, we appreciate, people contributing or helping us out with $5 here and there. So
yeah. I mean,
don't think that's a lot to ask.
No, and it's for instance, I just got my bill for bandwidth use, and I get a lot of downloads. So every little bit helps anyone that is in this field. So everything is appreciated. One thing I do want to talk about with the Allagash incident is I got the idea to watch what I could find last night on other accounts of them all talking about this going way back, not near the beginning, but, maybe in the 90s and or maybe earlier. I'm not sure. They look pretty young. But, the one thing about them is their story never changes. Their story is always exactly the same.
Right.
Getting to actually meet these guys and talk to them, to me, I think it's right up there, neck and neck with Travis Walton. It's solid as a rock.
I agree with you. It's an incredible case. So, I encourage everyone to please watch it. It's free on our YouTube page. I think that you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, I think we went a little long today. So we're probably going to have to wrap it up. Is there more news available on openminds.tv?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot, and there's always more at openminds.tv.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much.
Yep, thank you.
All right, and we'll talk to you next week. Hang in there, everyone, with a quick music break, and we'll be right back with Mark. That was a short clip from Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse. It's a short clip of a longer version, and all that music's available on our website. That music's by Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse, and he creates the music for this show, and that one is titled Allagash. So I thought I'd play that after we were talking about the Allagash. So now we have our guest, Mark Richfield. How are you?
Hey, Martin. I'm doing not too bad. Yourself?
I'm doing great, and thanks for joining us. Now, Dave was set to come on, and something came up, and here you are.
Yeah, Dave, because he's more directly involved in all the technical aspect and the fundraising and all the logistics that go along with this, he has more than his fair share of the workload. So he tapped me for a favor. And I got the job of coming over here and talking to you.
Now, you've been involved in this thing from the very beginning. Is that right?
Not quite the beginning. Dave and I have known each other for, I guess 4 or 5 years now. We were basically coffee shop friends. We went to the same place and see each other's face there, and you kind of wave, hey, I recognize you from the last 20 times. And after a while, we got talking and just got to know each other, found we had some things in common. Then I learned after a while that he had this very cool idea of putting this little private satellite into space. And again, we just got to talk about it. And he said, look, would you like to come on board with this? We could use all the help that we can possibly get. So I thought, hey, this is kind of a cool thing. I've never heard of anybody doing this before. And I thought,
right.
this is a totally excellent thing to get involved with. So here I am.
Now, before we get into exactly what this thing is supposed to do, can you tell us your background?
My background. Dave has a lot more formal training than I do. He has done his, I can't remember what the degree is he has at university. I'm more of a scientific layman. I read the books and whatnot. My background is I have I've done some work in computer network engineering, which is I string computers together so that they can talk. Currently, I'm just working basically as a blog writer. And that's about it.
First, before I forget, I do want to apologize to the listener because we had a high-pitched hum in the first part of the show. I figured out it was a filter, so that's taken care of, and I do apologize for that. I never like when that happens. And I have new, really good equipment in here, so hopefully this will be a good, clear sound for everyone. Okay, so let's get into what this satellite is, and you have an Indiegogo campaign going. And
correct.
So it was his brainchild, basically, and how did he come up with it? And let's talk about the equipment and everything this thing's supposed to do.
Okay, with regards to him coming up with it, that I am not 100% sure of. I do know Dave has always been enthusiastic about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, understanding, are we the only ones in the universe? Are these actual alien spacecraft that we see as little lights flickering in the sky from time to time? And I understand that just his searching online for different science-oriented pieces of information, I believe he just stumbled across the CubeSat, what do you want to call that, business private satellite option, and I think his imagination just went into overdrive, and he put two and two together and thought, nobody has done this before. This is something that's doable, and it could be done via a crowdsourcing. Mm-hmm. The satellites themselves, I don't know if you've actually taken a look on any of the websites, but they're basically a modular unit. Just a second here. Let me get the specs. Okay. Each modular unit is 10 centimeters by 10 by 11.35 centimeters. And basically, you've got to take whatever scientific equipment you've got that you want to put into space and make them fit that size parameter. And I believe you can, if your project is a bit larger than one single cube, I believe you can purchase several of them, hook them together, like daisy chain them to make one larger satellite. But of course, they've got to be able to fit whatever the payload restrictions, space restrictions are of the spacecraft that launches it. So perhaps they have to be put in a straight line, one block after another after another. You might not be able to put them at a right angle or something like that. But basically, they're just cube-shaped blocks.
Now, okay, so the payload of this rocket bringing these up through the atmosphere and into low-level gravity, they have an entire payload of these cubes, and each one gets deployed at certain altitudes or something?
That's my understanding of how it works. So I would assume that with each rocket, I'll just take a number off the top of my head. Maybe they can launch 10 or 20 kilograms worth of payload into space. So perhaps that would be 7 or 8 cubes, or perhaps a bit more. I guess it depends on the size, the configuration, whatever extra support materials are necessary for each satellite to be deployed. That's about all my understanding of that directly.
Okay. I have a question. We have a message board. And by the way, anyone can call in. The number's right at the top of the message board, which is on Podcast UFO, but that number is 603-967-4030. And the first question we have up here, the satellite industry is heavily regulated by the government. How has these regulations affected your strategy?
I don't believe they have affected it, Dave's project per se. these regulations already existed when he was looking into this. I believe this CubeSat program evolved within those restrictions, those laws, those codes. So he put this together with those restrictions and guidelines already in place.
I see. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the equipment. First of all, before we go into that, it must be very, I can only imagine it's very expensive to launch anything into space. So this fund that you have, the Indiegogo fund, what are you looking to raise?
I believe it's $50,000 altogether.
Mm-hmm. And I would just assume that a lot of that money would be just for the launch.
Yeah. I've just got the fact sheet here right now. The CubeSat kit itself is $19,625. And that is with the launch included. Then on top of that, there's the equipment that they're actually going to stick inside the satellite. So Dave wants to put in there a nanocam or possibly 2 nanocams that have got a special type of lens that allows you to see the widest possible range around you. So I believe he wants to get 2 of them, one on each side of the satellite, so we can see 360 degrees around each X, Y, and Z axis, so we can see the most that is possible. Then I believe there is a particular sort of radiation detection device.
Right. That's the scintillator counters.
I believe that's what you're correct.
Yeah.
And that's to detect a high-energy source that we would assume an alien spacecraft would have to be emitting large amounts of radiation, hopefully within a bandwidth that this device would be able to detect.
Yeah, we had someone write, they said there's very little evidence suggests that anomalous aerial objects emit ionizing radiation. And that's the type of radiation that these scintillation sensors. There's a number of things. One of the things, I know this is, it's a very glamorous thing to put something up into space and all that. But did he also think of ground detection?
I'm not sure about that. My understanding, you can only read so much from the ground. You can only see or hear so much from the ground. When you're thinking about telescopes, when you look at what can be seen with the Hubble telescope up in space versus a ground-based telescope, or a radio telescope that's in space versus a ground-based array, if you can get it up there, you eliminate a lot of the electromagnetic noise that is created by our civilization. So I'm pretty sure that Dave was thinking we've got to go aerial rather than ground-based right from the start. I don't believe he was considering doing it ground-based at all.
Okay. And as far as equipment goes, I would think that something, you have this one shot. You have to really choose your equipment wisely on what you're going to fill into this very small cube size object. And did he and you, or whatever involvement you have in this, did you consult someone as far as what equipment that would be best for this type of thing?
I know Dave has got quite a few friends that are within technology, within technological fields, science fields, and I believe he was networking with them to get ideas about what could be put into this small a space to do this kind of work.
I see.
I'm not sure the names of these people, but Dave gets around. He knows quite a few people with some serious degrees in their back pocket.
Now, what about who is going to monitor? And is it just one satellite?
Yeah, just one satellite. One of the cool things about this is that anybody would be able to monitor the information that we'd be getting. This is one of the cool things that he wants everybody to have access to this information and not have it just be filtered through us. And if I remember right, the information would be relayed down in one of the ham radio frequency bands.
Ah, I see. Okay. We have someone on the message board that actually works for a satellite company.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, and he's kind of surprised about, let's see, when a company sends a satellite, only a certain percentage can be used by business. The other functions have to be shared with the government or other businesses. Do you know anything about that part of it?
No.
Yeah.
No, my work is basically PR with regards to the project. So I've been getting word out, contacting various news sources to try and get support.
I got it. Okay. Now, another message came through that said such wide-angle cameras give a very low resolution and distorted views. Low-quality images of anomalous objects get hard science. Very little or nothing is useful for hard science. Has he considered other type of cameras?
I believe he has, but it comes down to money and the size of the satellite. There's trade-offs. If you want to see the most around you, of course, the resolution is going to be lower. I mean, you could put a camera with a very, what's the word I'm looking for?
High resolution or?
High resolution, high pixel count per square millimeter. But then it's only going to be pointing in one direction, and you're going to have to be able to move it around or move the satellite around to look at things. It's kind of like you want to be able to know that there's something out there that hasn't been put into space by humans.
That's okay. Do you know about how many of these cube satellites are already up in low orbit?
I'm not sure about that. I know people have been able to put them up there for different purposes. I mean, different companies can put them up there for imaging or environmental measurements. I believe there's one or two of them that are tracking the migrations of various animals from space. I believe there's people that are even looking at doing space art through one of these.
We have someone calling in. Hang on just a minute.
Oh, sure.
Hello there, caller. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Ray Stanford.
Oh, hey, Ray. How are you? I'm
pretty good.
I'll just tell this gentleman quickly. Ray Stanford is a longtime UFO researcher, way back, starting in the late 60s, I believe, maybe even early 60s. Ray, I'm not sure. Sorry about that. And also, he was very involved in this type of scientific exploration from a base many years ago in the desert. So, Ray, go ahead and pose your question.
Okay, yeah, I have several questions. One is the statement was made that put this into space because it eliminates a lot of noises from the Earth level. That is not a valid statement. In the first place, when you use instruments on the ground, and you're not limited by one little bitty box like a satellite, you have instruments that look in a specific bandwidth. They're not bothered about the other bands. So that's not an excuse. But let me say that if you're going to have something out there in space, Martin, you visited with us Goddard Space Flight Center last summer, and you saw the incredible test facilities required to check and see whether instruments were able to sustain the space environment. Not under the low pressure, the high temperature, and the temperature extremes from extremely cold to extremely hot. Nothing has been said in this discussion about testing this equipment, whether it's even viable. Spend $50,000 of people's money, but put it up there without testing. Testing is very expensive. And I want to say this too. You talked about all the noise on the surface of the Earth. I explained that. That's not a problem. But if you get up there in space, one of the big things you have to worry about is solar flares and radiation related to solar flares. And I can tell you, they spoke about a scintillator counter. Well, I'm very familiar with scintillator counters. One is they're designed in such a way that they're extremely directional, and it's going to be pointing in one direction. There's one instrument, one direction. Where's it pointing? How does it know where to point? And furthermore, you've got umpteen sources of cosmic radiation, hard radiation, ionizing radiation, including the famous gamma ray bursters, that a lot more of them occur than we generally see mentioned in the newspapers when you keep up with this. This sounds like to me, frankly, that this money is far better put into a ground station. I have experience in that in 1973 through 1985. I put together a system at that time, more than $2 million system of instruments. We got excellent results. There were no problems with these noise in the magnetometer, a very narrow bandwidth. We were looking in the extreme low frequency magnetic field. And not only that, on the ground you can not only have more instrument for less expense. You don't have the expense of launching them. You don't have the expense of testing them for space viability, space environment viability. And not only that, but you potentially have real human people there. Now, yes, I agree that instrumented recordings are much more important than human observations, but when you have something as controversial as anomalous aerial objects, it's very important to have human observers there that can not only recount what was being done with the instruments in a direct human way, but can describe from the human perspective what happened while the instruments making their very useful recordings to hard data science. So, frankly, this impresses me as more of a I admire people that try to do something new, and I admire that this project in that respect, in that perspective, but it seems ill-conceived. If there were some millions of dollars to put up instruments that can orient themselves and so on, fine, but you made a good point about the low resolution of the cameras. Scintillator counter is virtually worthless out there, and the person you're speaking with said that there's evidence that these things emit hard radiation. We're talking about ionizing radiation. That is extremely moot. The fact is that I've used instruments with these things for years, and we have found no evidence of this hard radiation. There's a few cases that we need to get out of the field of view. For one thing, that is the Cash Landrum case in Texas, because that, I believe, was probably an experimental black project vehicle, highly radioactive. And yes, there was ionizing radiation there. And although UFOs, anomalous aerial objects, as I prefer, can emit at levels that can do some physiological damage, I think we need to look at something viable on the surface of the Earth and not a highly endangered instrument of a scintillator counter up in space that not only is highly directional, doesn't know where to point without other sensors, but that also is going to be quickly damaged. For example, if certain solar events occur, it could be quickly knocked out, as well as the cosmic ray events could really flatten the capability of a scintillator counter to be very effective. So that's about all I have to say. Let him take it over from there and respond to what I've said. But, I admire the attempt, but frankly, at the surface of it, it sounds to me more like a publicity stunt. Someone would like to put them on the map as being a great pioneering UFO researcher. I say pioneering is, as pioneering does. The pioneering status should only be evaluated on results, not upon ideas that potentially will fall by poor planning. So thank you very much, Morton.
All right. Thank you, Ray.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. All right. Mark, so what do you say to all that?
Well, I'm not the technical guy, so I'm not savvy enough to comment on the directional capabilities of the detector. It sounds like the gentleman there had far more experience with this sort of equipment than I ever have. So I really can't comment with any degree of confidence on it. One thing that does occur to me, has his ground-based systems actually got any evidence of extraterrestrial craft?
Yes. Actually, he did, which was pretty amazing. I've actually been to his house, and he's gone over that with me.
Cool.
Yeah. And so the other part, though, that I found interesting, and I never even thought of, was the testing. Has there been any testing of the equipment to see if it'll withstand being in space?
Again, I'm not attached to the technical end of it. I would have to assume, knowing Dave, that he would have tested or he would have made arrangements to test the equipment. It would be very counterproductive to put an untested piece of gear into space, without at least seeing if it can withstand the temperatures of heat, the bursts of solar radiation that the caller referred to, or the extreme low temperatures. I know Dave is quite a knowledgeable young man. But I'm just assuming here. Mm-hmm. Also, I think that sooner or later, somebody has to take that first step to put something into space. I mean, you're only ever going to get information of a certain caliber based on ground-based systems. Sooner or later, you got to put something up there and take a chance, and that's what Dave's doing.
Yeah, and I understand the fact that it's not a high-funded project. Say an investment of millions of dollars. It would be very. I may be totally wrong in this, but I think it would be very hard to raise a lot of money for this type of investigation because, in many different ways, it's already shown that there's been no real money put into this. If Rockefeller was around and someone had brought up the idea with him, he was actually more of the funding person and had an open mind for something like this. But, like Ray said, maybe this is a project that could work, but maybe it's something that needs millions of dollars behind it for, the right type of equipment that's tested properly. NASA will never do it, but, I shouldn't say that. I don't think they will.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I don't see NASA ever taking the chance to do something like this. I think ultimately you're looking at privately funded ventures, with brave individuals. Your Richard Bransons, your Elon Musks, to funnel the money to talk to their friends to get money committed to a project like this. But you gotta start somewhere, and that's what Dave's doing. He's taking that first step, and maybe nothing will come of it. Maybe it'll go up there, and the thing, I don't know, will get hit by a meteorite, and that'll be it. But at least a first step is taken. And
so let's talk about
lots of money. Will put it into this.
Yeah, it may open the door for an idea. It would be good if there was some good hard science that would open the door, where that more people would get involved. So explain to me, if you would, how this is monitored by anybody. Is it an app situation or something like that?
Boy, I wish I had a bit more information on that. I'm not sure what the monitoring system would be. I know that it is transmitted down within the ham radio bands. I would have to assume that Dave would have a transceiver set up that would be able to translate the information to a website where anybody could log on and monitor it themselves.
All right. Now, what type of let's just say, all right, this thing is up in the sky and a UFO happens to fly by in range and it captures some type of video. Now, what's the steps on what happens with this video that's captured, and how does it become public, say, or what happens with it?
I would, oh boy, Wish I had a bit more information. I would have to assume that because it's on the site, that Dave or one of our partners would be monitoring it at the time, or an individual logged onto the site would be monitoring, and would report it to the other members, and then would post that video onto the appropriate social media sites, or email it, or transmit it to the appropriate UFO groups around the world to let them know that this event has happened.
I see. Okay. And so that goes for also if they happen to detect the radiation. Is there any other equipment beside those two?
No, as far as I know, those are the two main pieces. I believe if more money, if the money that they're shooting for, the $50,000, if they end up getting more than that, they possibly might be able to put other instruments into the CubeSat. What those are, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
As I said, I'm the PR guy.
Yeah. So maybe we can, for the remainder of this interview, which isn't too long, the other guests will be calling in shortly, but maybe for the remainder of the show, you can talk more about what you are doing to as the PR guy for this. I keep asking you questions that you really have been left in the dark on. Basically, and I understand that you're not the technical guy, but it's I would expect that you would know a little bit more about these issues, and it's too bad that Dave couldn't be on. And nothing against you. You're a nice guy. You're doing a good job, but I'm just a little surprised that you don't know more about these questions we're asking.
Yeah. I don't really have much of a comment there. I've only got the information that I got off the CubeSat website, the information that is on the Indiegogo crowdsourcing. Doing the best that I can here. With regards to my duties, it's basically getting in touch with the various media outlets to try and get as many of them on board to get them covering our effort. And that's been tough. I mean, with a lot of media outlets, as soon as you mention something like UFOs or searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, anything along those lines, they get a little leery, a little touchy. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it's seen as a dangerous area of news, which isn't going to do your career as a journalist or a broadcaster much good.
Right.
You're going to be perceived as a bit of a flake that you're covering these kinds of information, these kinds of news.
Now, you did a good enough job to get this out there where I heard about it, and I saw it in the news. So how did you get that out? Was that a UK paper that initially reported on this?
I believe so. All of this comes back through Dave for the most part. I've been sending them out to all of the newspapers that I can find, all of the American, Canadian, and UK media outlets, BBC, CBS, basically anybody that I can find contact information for.
All right, so after you hit the goal, say you hit the Indiegogo fee of $50,000, I believe that's what you said it is. All right, and so what are the next steps?
I believe then Dave starts purchasing the actual equipment, and again, I would assume putting it through its testing paces to make sure that it does the job that it's supposed to do. He's got to be able to pack it all into that 10 by 10 by 11.35 centimeter space, and get it all to work reliably too. As your one caller there suggested, space is a very hostile environment. Mm-hmm. Kind of pointless to put something up there if it's just going to get fried within 5 minutes.
Yeah, there's a lot of waste of money. Now, I can't really, I'm trying to picture this and envision exactly how this thing will work. So this is a cube that's already made, and you have to alter it to add your equipment. Is that what?
You get the cube as a kit, and you have to fit whatever it is you want to put into space within that cube, and within the weight restrictions as well.
But how does the camera come through the cube to actually work?
My understanding is you would have the lens mounted on through the outside wall of the cube.
But you're talking about this cube restriction. So so I'm envisioning that this is in the interior and then it's beveled out so the lens does not protrude past the cube?
That would be my understanding of it.
And probably the same for the other equipment?
Yeah. It's got to fit within that cube itself. So if I try to visualize this, I would assume that on the wall where the camera is going to be protruding, it would have to be beveled inwards a little bit so that the outermost perimeter, I guess would be the right word, of the lens isn't going to exceed the surface of that cube. Because I'm guessing it's got to be packed into a certain space in the launch vehicle, and if the lens is sticking out, it's going to get bashed up against, maybe another satellite or a retaining wall or something like that. Because you've also got to have the mechanism that deploys these satellites. So I'm guessing that's going to cause a little bit of rough and tumble on it. If you've got a lens sticking out, it could get, cracked, and that's the end of that.
Yeah. It's kind of like putting all your eggs in one basket, this type of thing. So I imagine there has to be a lot of thought going into this. And is Dave the type of person that can actually put this stuff together, or is he working with someone that can do this technical part?
He is working with other people. He's a smart guy. If he doesn't know how to do something himself, he talks to people that do. He finds people that are all knowledgeable in a certain area and are willing to commit some time to the project.
All right. Just 1 second. We're on if you're listening live, we're on with Mark Richfield. He's talking about CubeSat, a UFO detection device projected to launch in lower gravity and possibly see a UFO, monitor UFOs. So how does this... and also, you can jump in the chat room at podcastufo.com, or you can call in at 603-967-4030. How does that? How would that transmit signals? Now, this is just my naivety because I don't know how this works. But you have something in lower orbit, and another question I was going to ask you: how long is this projected to stay up?
When I've taken a look at the CubeSat website, it seemed that in low orbits, they can be anywhere from a few weeks to a few months before the orbit naturally decays and the satellite is burned up on reentry.
So this thing does not have a very long lifespan.
No, based on what I've seen on the CubeSat website, no, it's not like it's sitting up there for years.
But months, possibly?
You might get 2 or 3 months out of it, is what it looks like to me.
So it's going to do a lot of work fast.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. There was another question. Oh, the other question I had was, how is it going to project signals down? Do you know any part of that?
As far as I know, let me see here.
Someone just answered that on the message board. They said a simple UHF ham radio transmitter or digital mode would work. Packet radio, essentially.
Yeah.
All right. And so this project happens, this thing goes up into the air. Now, what is your job? Are you going to, like, still promote that this thing is up there and all that? Are you still working?
More than likely. Dave, like I say, Dave and I, we see each other from time to time at the coffee shop, so he's my friend, yeah. If he needs more work done on this, I'm definitely on board with him. Mm-hmm. But right now, at this stage, it's just getting the word out with regards to the crowdsourcing program, and keeping my fingers crossed that it pays off in the long run.
All right. We have our next guest is just about ready to come on board here, and so he'll be calling in. And hang on just a second.
Sure.
And so I want to thank you very much for your time, and hopefully you'll reach that fund and you'll actually discover something. That'd be great.
Thank you very much for having me, Martin. I appreciate you taking the time to host this.
All right. Okay. Thanks so much, Mark.
Okay. You take care, Martin.
All
Cheers.
right. Cheers. Hello, Preston. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Preston, we just happened to hit at the top of the hour, and that means we're going to take a quick music break. It just couldn't work quite as smooth as I wanted, but it was pretty close. So hang in there just 1 minute. We'll be right back with the music break, right after the music break. So now, if you're listening live, we're on the line with Preston Dennett. And Preston has just released a book recently called UFOs over Utah. How are you, Preston?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. This is we talked briefly the other day just for a sound check, but this is the first time you've been on the show, and I want to welcome you. And for the person that's never heard you talk before, why don't you fill us in on your background?
All right. Well, let's see. I'm a resident of Reseda in Southern California. I'm the fifth of 6 children. I have 3 older brothers, an older sister, and a younger sister. And around 1986, I grew up very skeptical of all things paranormal and life after death, UFOs, ghosts, anything like that.
Whoops, you there? Hello? I can't hear you. If you can hear me, Preston, it shows you're still online. Please check your mic, or please check your system. No, he's gone. Sorry for the live listener. We're going to put him right back on. The call ended up dropping. Okay, so we're having trouble here, technical trouble. I'm going to ask him to call in on his phone here. Hang on just 1 second, please. I apologize for that.
Hello?
Oh, there you are. Are you back?
I'm back.
All right. Hang on just a minute. I was just... All right. I can't tell because I guess you dropped. Did you drop?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. Okay. All right. It shows you're back here. All right. Sorry, live listener. It's a little complicated sometimes here, and so hopefully that won't happen again. All right. So you were talking about your family, and back in 1986, I believe you said.
Right. Yeah, my family was pretty skeptical of paranormal things, as was I. But I heard this report on the news in 1986 about a sighting over Alaska. And it was a pretty interesting sighting. Not much detail on the news. They just said this pilot had seen this object over Alaska.
Oh, Japan. Mm-hmm.
Right. Found out later it was a really good case. There was radar confirmation, multiple witnesses, and this objects actually followed this plane for a number of miles. And the news said none of this. And I was very skeptical and surprised to be hearing this on the news. And so I made a mistake of asking my friends, my family, my coworkers, what they thought of this ridiculous pilot. And this is when I got a real shock. I found out a lot of people that I knew and trusted implicitly had been keeping secrets from me in regards to their UFO encounters. And, not just sightings. I mean, my brother, he chased a UFO across the San Fernando Valley with his two friends. I later interviewed all of them. My sister-in-law was with two other people, and they all saw unexplained lights over Van Nuys Air Force Reserve Base. I later interviewed all of them, too. And, I just kept finding out a lot of people I knew had encounters. Like a lady at work described how this UFO had followed her home from the library. And she says, Preston, it's so strange because it takes us 5 minutes to get home from the library, and somehow it took us over an hour. Now, she knew nothing about missing time. And at this point, I'm picking up UFO books, looking to think, these are meteors. This is what they've got to be. But no, there was an incredible amount of evidence out there. I was shocked to learn this subject had been studied for decades and was pretty much, not mainstream at all.
Yeah, it's funny. I relate to everything you're saying, and it's only because I sort of on the outside thought, well, they're possible and all that. But after I had a sighting and after I started this show, basically, I almost started the show about the same time I started really looking into things. And, I was totally baffled in that particular trying to remember the name of that flight. It was a shipping company, Japanese pilot. That is one of the, in my opinion, that is a great sighting and one that could launch anyone's interest, really.
Yeah, it wasn't good news. I was not happy to discover this. I felt honestly scandalized because, first of all, my family and friends have been lying to me, basically. And, the subject was never taught in schools. It wasn't taken seriously. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I just couldn't believe it.
So how old were you then? Were you actually in high school or?
I was in college. I was, a young man, for sure. And, but, taking a lot of science classes, I was very interested in astronomy and, anthropology, science, and things like this. So, it was really difficult. Not good news at all. I ended up buying all the books I could find, subscribing to magazines. I started interviewing people and going to these sighting locations and hotspots, joining UFO groups. And one thing led to another. I wrote an article for the local paper, and they put it on the cover. I got a bunch of calls from that. Oh. And I'm like, all right, something is going on here. I'm going to have to look into this.
Now, when you interviewed these people, did you write it? Was this like written interviews that you went over, or did you actually do audio interviews?
Oh, I recorded them. I record every interview I do, and now I do an initial interview, and then I can later do a recorded interview. And right off the bat, I was pretty much doing formal interviews.
Now, are you also what you would consider to be an investigator?
I joined MUFON. I took their test to become a field investigator, which, although it's a take-home test, I thought, this is going to be easy. It was not easy.
Really? Wow. Uh-huh.
No, you had to know quite a bit about clouds, quite a bit about photography, all kinds of things about astronomy and UFO history. So it took a lot of studying, a lot of work. I got a really good grade, though, and I became a MUFON field investigator.
And is your do you have a territory like where you are now?
Well, since I'm based here in California, so that's where I'm going to say the vast majority of the cases that I've investigated have been from, but certainly by no means only here.
Right, which will lead us into your book. What was the genesis of the book? In Nevada, there's a lot going on.
Right. I initially wrote UFOs over California because I had so many cases, and I was worried that some of these cases were going to be lost to posterity. And I followed that up with UFOs over New York because I thought New York had a lot to contribute to the whole UFO phenomena. And this is how it kind of started. And I started looking for states that had made significant contributions to how we feel about UFOs, how we think about them, what we know. And so after that came UFOs over New Mexico, and I followed that up with UFOs over Nevada because I think it's become a significant part of the whole UFO subculture.
And do you know, when you were doing your research, when the first recorded UFO sighting was over Nevada?
Oh, yeah. Each state I found has a really long history of UFO encounters. I'm stretching back usually over 100 years. And that's absolutely true with Nevada, which is kind of surprising because their population was really not very high, 100 years ago.
Right. I mean, the government owns most of Nevada.
Yeah, this is what's also really interesting about Nevada. The government owns like 87% of the state is federal land. So that's a huge, huge number, the largest of any state. And I think has had a significant impact on how UFOs are seen and encountered in that state. The earliest case I could find, actual case, because there are some indications of very early cases among the Native Americans in terms of petroglyphs, and Charles Hall wrote his book Millennial Hospitality, and he said he encountered Native Americans who told him some legends about early visitors in that area. But the earliest case I could find was actually a humanoid case, and that occurred on May 27th, 1897, when two police officers, or a group of police officers, saw this glowing humanoid, not just once or twice, but actually over a period of 3 days. And they described it as flying around. It had this light, a phosphorescent light, they said, surrounding it. And at one point, it came real close to them, and they got a good look at it. So it's hard to say what this is. If this is, it could be a ghost-like thing, I suppose.
Wow.
But it's got a lot of the same, I would say, red flags or details that you see in modern-day humanoid encounters.
Now, was this something you found through microfiche newspaper clippings? Or how did you find this?
That one I believe I found on the internet, and from a newspaper, actually. Yeah, it was in the issue of the Nevada State Journal.
Now, are you just curious? So you've done. It sounds like your other books are UFOs over certain states. Do you have your eye? Before we go on, do you have your eye on the next state you're interested in writing a book on?
Yeah, absolutely. I've just finished one, actually. It's sent off to the publishers, and they're reviewing it now. It's UFOs over Arizona.
It's funny. I was going to ask you that. That's another state that has a large amount of land owned by the government as well.
Right, and a lot of UFO encounters that, it's the Phoenix Lights and Travis Walton. Some really significant encounters have occurred there.
Right. So, all right, well, we'll stick on this book for now until that one comes out. We can talk later about that. But so in Nevada, you think of Area 51, you think of, there's been a lot of sightings around Las Vegas. Actually, I know a former TV personality that has quietly told me that she had a huge triangle sighting right outside of a casino, a hotel right on the outskirts of Las Vegas. She said the thing looked like it was a couple of football fields wide.
Right. It's surprising. I think this is speaks to the federally owned land in Nevada. Because there's so much federally owned land, most of the population in Nevada is pretty much, urban. They're centered in large cities like Las Vegas or Laughlin or Reno or what have you. And, speaking to that, there's the Burning Man Festival that comes every year.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That becomes like the third major city in Nevada overnight. So there aren't, there's not a whole lot of population in the country. And so when people are seeing UFOs, it's either while they're driving along these roads late at night or, at the day as well, but mostly at night. Or these objects are coming right over the city. And I'm not sure if it's the lights of the casinos or the Las Vegas Strip, but there's a good dozen cases where these objects are hovering right over casinos.
Wow.
Right next to them.
Maybe there was a big wind.
It's pretty remarkable because these objects are really brazen. I think in some cases they're wanting to be seen. And they're showing themselves off. Or in others, they're very evasive. And they're clearly, if UFOs wanted to end the cover-up, they could do it overnight. And they're not doing that.
Okay. So if anyone's listening live, if you want to call in, that number is 603-967-4030. And if you want to jump in the chat room, and I'll give a little hint who the celebrity is in the chat room, because I'm getting some heat in there. And so anyway, anyone is welcome to call in. Also, one of the things I think of is, how much is experimental aircraft coming out of Area 51?
Right. Well, I'm sure that some of the UFOs people are seeing, particularly these craft that are rising directly up out of Area 51 or landing, are probably ours. And by that, I mean reverse engineered ET technology. So maybe not completely ours, maybe borrowed or learned from the ETs. But that's what a lot of the inside information coming out from that area is confirming. But not all of it. Absolutely not all of it. On the outskirts, there's some really remarkable encounters. And if this is ours, well, they're scaring the wits out of people on these roads and darting in front of cars, hovering. Like, for example, there's this one guy driving along and sees a UFO. He's in his pickup truck. He gets out of his truck to get a closer look, and this thing comes swooping down right overhead, 50 feet up. He gets nervous, jumps in his truck, and tries to take off, but he's not moving. Can't figure out why until he looks down, and his truck is hovering like 5-10 feet in the air. And he's completely freaked out. The object suddenly drops his truck, and he takes off. And, I know how that sounds, but these are called car levitation cases or car lift cases. They're pretty rare, but they're consistent, and I know of at least 2 others that took place in Nevada and several in other states.
Yeah, I've heard of that too. There was actually a case near me in New Hampshire. It's very controversial, where a car with 2 young teenagers supposedly lifted up until the guy honked the horn and it dropped them. But it also could be that they, who knows, they went over some rocks and tried to make up an excuse. But and that's been a controversial story. But there is also one, I want to say, something similar in Australia I've heard about.
Right, I know that case well. The Knowles family on the Mundarabilla Plains, the exact same thing, except this object actually came down and landed on the top of their car and pulled it up into the air.
Wow. Yeah, amazing, huh? So one of the things you think about, okay, so Area 51 possibly would be testing, but they have so much space, so much area to test their planes in. Why would they go over populated areas with their unusual equipment?
I don't think that they would. And if they are, it's probably against protocol because, speaking to the size of Area 51, it would take you days to drive around it. I went out there, to the Little Alien, that little cafe out there.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
To, the mailboxes where people watch the UFOs, or used to. And I have to tell you, I had 3/4 of a tank of gas. I nearly ran out on a very fuel-efficient car. It took me all day just to get to the nearest gas station. It is just desolate out there.
Right.
Huge. And, yeah, I can't prove who's inside these things unless they actually land and the things get out. But, here's another case. This guy's driving along Nellis Air Force Base, right along the main highway there outside of Las Vegas, and sees this light, and it darts in front of his car. It's quite a ways up there. Stops, darts all the way to the other side of the horizon, stops there, darts again in front of the freeway, all the way to the other side, and it's darting back and forth over this crowded highway. If this is us, I'd be shocked.
Yeah. There's all kinds. I'm sure you probably share the philosophy that we have no idea what they are. We have not been able to take that step yet where we can figure it out. Could be extraterrestrial, could be something we haven't thought of, could be interdimensional. Right. The time travelers people come up with, it's...
Well, I think in some respects, all of that can be true. And I'm a big believer in the extraterrestrial hypothesis, only because I think it's the best evidence that... it's the theory that best fits the evidence.
Yeah, I tend to lean toward that partially because of what we would do if we had the capability. And, there's always the question of, well, they can't get there, they can't get here from there, it's too far and all that. But, it's just part of physics that we haven't figured out yet. And imagine what we will figure out the next, 100,000 years.
Right. I think people have tried to label, UFOs as everything. To a certain extent, we're interdimensional. We have souls. We can go out of our bodies. There's life after death. So we ourselves are interdimensional. As far as time travel, well, there's a lot of reports of UFOs doing exactly that. And another theory is demonic. And which I always answer saying, well, if you're going to label all these UFOs as demonic, the God's honest truth is their behavior falls under the same umbrella as human behavior. And it would be a lot easier to prove that humanity is, hostile species than it would be to prove that ETs are. Because there's not a lot of evidence really at all of what I would call sadistic behavior, among ETs or in ET encounters. Mm-hmm. Certainly there are some, awful encounters, and there are some really great ones, but most of them it falls under that normal bell curve we see.
Yep. Now, as far as Project Blue Book goes, do you know how many cases in Nevada were actually declared unidentified?
Oh, yeah. Not a lot. There was 4. And I'm not exactly sure why that's the case. At some point, Blue Book became more like a publicity exercise, sort of a way for the Air Force to wash its hands of the UFO problem. And
so do you think there's what are your thoughts on a government cover-up?
Oh, I think the evidence is undeniable. I think it's demonstrable through the documents that have been released through the Freedom of Information Act, through the testimony of literally, it's got to be at least 1,000 by now, what I would call whistleblowers or government insiders. I think there's no doubt that there's a government cover-up, and it's still in place. It's been a disastrous failure, but look at what happened in Stevensville, Texas. There's a guy out there who said he was actually threatened by military people. And when the Air Force was asked about the sightings over Stevensville, they claimed no knowledge of it. And then they said, oh, you know what? That was us. And what you saw was the afterburners from jets.
Right.
Which completely ignores the evidence. And there's cases where a UFO will fly over. A lot of people see it, and then the Air Force comes rushing in, chasing these objects, and sometimes will even release balloons and things like this to confuse it, or flares.
Yeah, flares and Phoenix lights. Yep.
Exactly what happened to there. So, there is a very active cover-up. This is our government, our secret government, is neck deep in this subject. It is having a huge, huge impact on humanity, and a lot of people don't even realize it. I mean, we could end this economic crisis, the energy crisis, and the environmental crisis pretty darn quickly if we would just release this so-called free energy that's being suppressed.
And what do you mean by that exactly?
Well, the ET technology. We don't need fossil fuels anymore. We don't need to burn them. There's no reason for it. We have the ET technology, and it's in private hands. What we're experiencing now is basically a constitutional crisis. Our president isn't necessarily in the loop. Senators, governors. What we're dealing with is a military-industrial complex that has taken over this whole project. And by that, I mean like the 4-star generals, the unelected officials.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about this. Now, what has given you this? What has convinced you this strongly that there is ET technology out there that's available to us?
Well, I would say it's primarily the work of other researchers. I mean, Stephen Greer, in his book Disclosure, and a number of other researchers have been focusing on that area in particular. I've talked to a few government insiders myself who have contacted me. For example, recently, a gentleman contacted me who worked at Edwards Air Force Base and as a contractor. And he told me he's on his deathbed. Right now he's very ill, and he wanted to tell his story before he passed away. And he had a very interesting story to tell. He had a close friend who worked on the base, and it was his job to supply materials. So he'd often go on to Edwards Air Force Base and talk with some guy who was in charge of building these projects. And as he's walking on the base one day, he looks over at this hangar where there's a window, and he sees this typical UFO. It was tiny. It was about the size of a sports car, silver, and it was floating right there, in mid-space. And he turns to his friend, his co-employee, and says, "What's that?" And his friend turns white and puts his finger to his lips and says, "Don't say a word. You're not supposed to see that. And let's get out of here." And they left, and the guy would never talk about it. Wouldn't talk about it for years until finally, this guy that I interviewed was able to convince him to speak about it because this guy wanted a favor. And the only way the guy would grant the favor is if he told him what they saw. And he says, all right, it was a secret technology. It's reverse engineered from UFOs and involving electromagnetic energy that powers these craft. So that's one case, private, that's never been published. I've got a number of them that I haven't published yet, and there are hundreds of these cases out there. Of whistleblowers.
Yeah, I think it's kind of goes along the same lines with the UFO. It's like, okay, we hear these stories, but where is it? We want to see it, we want to touch it, feel it, watch it. We want the evidence. It's exactly the same as far as UFOs.
Right. Well, the best evidence would be a UFO itself, a UFO crash. And there are probably a good 100 UFO crash cases, with Roswell, of course, being the best. But ironically, the UFO crash cases, pretty much all we have is eyewitness testimony. So we have nothing physical to support it that's in the public arena. I mean, there's enough evidence in the public arena now to prove UFOs, without a doubt, between landing trace cases, radar evidence, photographic evidence, implant removals, metal fragments, medical evidence, both healings and injuries. And I could go on. The evidence is mountainous.
Why do you think that it just will not roll down the hill where everybody says, okay, UFOs exist? Why do you think that the brakes are on?
I think that there's a couple of reasons for it, and the main one being a very active government cover-up and a policy of ridiculing witnesses. And when people will report a UFO to the Air Force, they're ridiculed and told what they saw was a balloon or birds or what have you. And so it's been a very effective policy. And we have this on documents that was the Air Force policy, to ridicule and debunk cases. So it's a tragedy, really. But I think it's finally breaking free. Most people that I interview, I always ask them, is it all right if I use your name, or would you prefer to remain anonymous? And half at least say, oh, no, you can use my name. I have no problem with that. And the trend is definitely towards more and more people believing in UFOs. If you look at the Gallup polls over the decades, it's now like 50-50. We're real close to sort of a tipping point, I think.
What do you think the tipping point would have to be?
God, I don't know. I mean, we've had presidents who've said they've seen UFOs. Senators, governors. Governor Fife Symington of Arizona said he saw the Phoenix Lights. And there are still people who aren't going to believe this until, one of these things shows up, I think, and doesn't go away for at least, a week or 3 days or something, to where it becomes, front page news and grips the media in a way that, for example, this terrorism incident it has. It's been all terrorism all day, all the time on the news. And one of these days, a UFO is going to show up, and that's what's going to happen. It's going to be, disclosure in capital letters.
Yeah,
I think it will happen. Either it's coming from the government, maybe not the U.S. government, or from the ETs. It's going to come from one or the other. And I think there's some evidence to point towards the ETs sort of pushing the government's hand.
Well, people that were in the UFO field back in 1950s were saying, oh, we feel like, it's going to happen soon. And it just drags on and on and on, and I have, I don't know, I want to say I have no real hope that I'm going to actually be able to live long enough to see it actually disclosed. It would be, if that's what the government is actually doing, I personally feel that it's possible that there's some part of the government, but not the entire government. It's compartmentalized, I believe.
Right. Well, even among the intelligence agencies, it's compartmentalized. So, it makes it very difficult. And I don't know if it's going to happen step by step, inch by bloody inch, basically getting this information out, or if there's going to be, a sudden, vast disclosure type event.
Yeah.
But it's trending that way, and I can't see it going the other way. I can't see it backing up at this point.
Yeah, that's right. You can't unring the bell that's already rung.
Right.
And I think another really big case like, the Phoenix Lights or something like that, or, there are some really solid cases, but when you get such a mass sighting, I think that's what's would really help initiate, more and more people at least coming to grips with the fact that we are being visited by something, whatever it is. Who knows?
Well, I mean, we've had a number of these mass sightings too. They've happened pretty much every 5 or 10 years. We'll have this giant wave that cannot be ignored, whether it's Gulf Breeze or Hudson Valley or the Topanga Canyon UFO wave or the Phoenix Lights.
There was that one in Chicago too. Tinley Park.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, I remember
that. O'Hare was quite a case too. That was an interesting case. Now, getting back to your book and back to focus a little more on Nevada, are there any crash cases?
There is. There's a number of them, but probably the very, very best one is this Las Vegas UFO crash. And it's actually been overlooked, I think, to a large extent in the UFO community. People always talk about Roswell or Kecksburg or the Aztec crash. But I have to tell you, this Las Vegas UFO crash has an enormous amount of evidence and thousands of witnesses to it. It began when this meteor, what they thought was a meteor, was sighted on the East Coast. And this was on April 18th, 1962. And this object was seen over New York and moving across the sky, but it was seen over a number of other states as well, moving westward, and they timed it. It was going about 4,500 miles per hour, much too slow to be a meteor by far, and was actually being tracked on radar by a number of states, by Nellis Air Force Base. They sent a plane out after it, as did Luke Air Force Base. It was tracked in Arizona, Idaho, even in California. And this object was seen to turn, to slow down, and came lower and lower and lower, and actually landed in Utah, at which point it flew first over Nephi, Utah, and set off these explosions which were so bright that, this was at night, that the street lights actually turned off because they're photovoltaic, they're sensitive to light. Mm-hmm. And all these people saw it. It cut out the power, kept on going, and landed over Eureka, where it caused another power outage. It actually landed there, and people saw it. Took off again and headed towards Las Vegas, north of Las Vegas, and ended up exploding. And it was extremely bright. An enormous number of people saw it. People saw it in Reno, and outside Mesquite is where it was closest to.
Wow, that's a pretty wild one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and what's great about this, not only all these people saw it, from across the United States. There's Frank Edwards was the first to investigate this. He was a pioneering UFO researcher. Mm-hmm. But he was about it for a long time. Kevin Randall finally picked it up, as did a few other researchers, and have found more evidence, including speaking to people, government insiders, Air Force personnel, who claimed that they were part of the crash retrieval operation and actually went out there to pick this thing up, drove out there in a bus with blacked out windows, and picked up this saucer-shaped craft.
Really? Wow. Now, did they talk about where it went when they picked it up?
No, we don't have that information in the public arena. Unfortunately, it was most likely shipped off to Area 51, Wright-Patterson, and various Air Force bases, throughout the United States. I have to tell you, a lot of these Air Force bases are holding this hardware. I've found a number of bases in California that have been implicated, Norton Air Force Base, Edwards Air Force Base, certainly, and a lot of other bases.
Wow. So you're talking about the bases here. Are there any sightings over military bases?
Oh, yeah. There's quite a number of them. For example, way back in 1947, one of the first early cases was right over Lake Mead, where a group of officers saw 6 discs. In Nellis Air Force Base, they've had a number of sightings. A good one occurred in February 1952 when their airport control tower became flooded with calls from Las Vegas, where they were seeing a bunch of UFOs. And they wanted to know if they were seeing anything there. And I'm like, no, we haven't seen anything. But they looked over towards Las Vegas, and this is when they saw this metallic craft come gliding in at a slow pace. And it actually was at about 200 feet altitude and stopped right over the runway there at Nellis for about 20 minutes until they decided, we better send a plane out to intercept it, which they did, and the object took off. So, yeah, there's case after case. April 17th, 1952, a group of workers at Nellis saw 18 objects. One of my favorite cases, actually, was when the Air Force was conducting high-altitude test flights over Mud Lake. And this was using the X-15 aircraft, which is, the fastest and highest craft we have, certainly at that time, which was, April 30th, 1962. And this pilot was flying at around 200,000 feet, moving over 3,000 miles an hour, high as we can go, when he says he saw 2 objects pass over his plane, actually pretty close to it. He was able to take footage of this objects, and the footage showed 2 white silver discs flying in tight formation, only about 200 feet over his plane. And they did another high-altitude test a couple of months later, on July 17, 1962. Same exact thing. The pilot was at 314,000 feet when he saw 6 of these objects pacing his plane in formation. What I like about this case, this was originally researched by Leonard Stringfield, a really good researcher, highly respected. And this case points to the probability that these are not ours. I mean, we're going as high and as fast as we can, and what do we find? Someone else is already up there, and it's not us.
Wow.
Really remarkable case.
Never heard that one. That's really interesting. Are there any UFO landing cases?
Oh, yeah. There's some really interesting UFO landing cases in Nevada. I'm going to say probably the best one, in my opinion, would be an incident which occurred right outside Ely, E-L-Y, Ely, Nevada, which is occurred on November 23rd, 1957, to Lieutenant Joseph Long. And this guy had just completed his survival training. He was a member of the 97th Fighter Interceptor Squadron, a legitimate witness, a military guy who should be familiar with this type of thing. At any rate, his car stalls while he's driving along this highway late at night outside Ely, and he sees this object landed right along the highway. He got out of his car to figure out why it had stalled, and that's when he saw this object. And looking at it, he realizes there was actually 4 of these objects, and they were all real small, just tiny little things, maybe 20 feet across, 10 feet high. No markings on them, a little dome on top with little landing pods there, little landing legs, and glowing slightly and making a low buzzing noise. So he's very curious and surprised and starts walking towards one of them, gets about 50 feet away from it, when suddenly all of them start, that buzzing noise increases in pitch, and they all take off very quickly at once and dart away. And what's amazing about this case is he immediately reports it to his superiors, which is the right thing to do. And Blue Book officers came to investigate it, and they weren't interested in investigating it. They were worried about publicity, actually. This is what J. Allen Hynek said, and he pointed to this case as indicative of how Blue Book was bungling the whole UFO investigation and wasn't interested in investigating things. Their only worry was publicity, and they wanted to discredit this officer and ended up hiring a psychologist to do that, and the psychologist really had a difficult time doing it. He said, this is a really good witness. The only way you might possibly be able to explain this thing was highway hypnosis. And that's how they explained it, highway hypnosis. Mind you, he's not driving anymore. He's out of the car. He's driving. He's walking along. He's walking up to this thing. So it's ridiculous.
Wow. That landing case you mentioned with those little saucers sounds similar to the one that Gordon Cooper witnessed or was involved in filming. The thing, had little pads come out and landed, and they filmed it. Are you familiar with that case?
Yeah, that was at Edwards Air Force Base.
That was Edwards, okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, another really good witness. I mean, if this guy's lying, our astronaut really? No.
Yeah, I know. And and not only that, he never looked. I don't know, something about Gordon Cooper was always very believable. I mean, I know even beyond being an astronaut.
Right. Well, to skeptics, I have to say, if you don't believe in UFOs, you have not done your homework. You have to objectively look at this phenomenon. I know it's difficult because it affects people's worldview, it affects their views on religion and human origins and everything. It's a very intense topic in a lot of ways. It really hits home.
Right. So if you're listening live and you just tuned in, we are on with Preston Dennett, and he has a book, UFOs over Nevada. You're welcome to call in as well, and that's 603-967-4030. We have, I don't know, about 7 or 8 minutes left here. And so what are the 3 most important Nevada UFO encounters that you can think of?
Well, I'm going to say probably the third biggest one in terms of the effect that how we view UFOs has got to be Charles Hall and his story of the Tall Whites, Millennial Hospitality, a series of books, which he originally published as semi-fictional, but has gone on the lecture circuit pretty much saying that this is true, that he went out there and had these multiple encounters outside Indian Springs with these ETs. It's a remarkable story. And
it's a little controversial also.
Absolutely.
It brings up a lot of controversy when that's talked about. So go ahead. There's 2 more.
And the second I'm going to put is the Las Vegas UFO crash, which we talked about, because it's got so many witnesses, and it's undeniable. I mean, we had jets chasing this thing. It was on radar. There was military statements about it. So we still have not explained that one. And the first, I think, is pretty obvious. It's got to be the whole Area 51 complex with Bob Lazar and George Knapp and all the researchers like Linda Moulton Howe and Wendell Stevens and Bill Hamilton, who have interviewed, I think it's upwards of 50 Area 51 insiders. So certainly it doesn't rest on Bob Lazar really at all. There's a lot of other witnesses to say that we are reverse engineering UFOs in this base. And there are people who claim to have worked there. Bill Uhouse is probably one of the most, I would say, well-known military officials who claims to have worked directly with ETs there at the base, reversing engineering their technology.
Question up on the message board. Have you personally ever seen a UFO firsthand?
I never saw anything until I started investigating this, and I've had almost a dozen encounters, some really good ones. And I have to tell you, I don't know what happened, but I started having sightings almost immediately after I started investigating this stuff. The first one happened when I went to a UFO meeting, and just a lecture to see a contactee. And he said, after my lecture, we can all go out and I'll try to call down a UFO. And I'm like, wow, all right. I was pretty skeptical, but there was got to be 100 people in that audience. Only 10 people showed up to see if this guy could call down a UFO, maybe 20. And this is in downtown Santa Monica, and he says, okay, let's all get in a circle and meditate. I'm like, oh, great. This is not what I wanted to do. Just call down your UFO, all right? But I was open-minded just barely enough to do it. And this is downtown Santa Monica. You look up at the sky, you can't see a single star. Honest to God, it's too much light pollution.
Yep.
And he says, all right, that's enough. Everyone look at that portion of the sky. It's coming, and boom, if it didn't come, this shooting star-like object darts across the sky. So it
wouldn't be a satellite or anything explainable that you could think of right off?
It looked a lot like a shooting star, maybe a little bit too slow. Not a satellite, no way. So, yeah, it could have been a shooting star. But I don't know how he predicted it. It wasn't a meteor shower at that time.
I spoke with someone that went to something over New York where they kind of did a very similar thing, and she said, I'll be darned if we didn't see 3 different things that certainly were very strange. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I started having other sightings. I joined CSETI. That was headed by Stephen Greer. We had a number of sightings in our group. And there's been a couple of times I'm driving along the road at night, and it's happened twice. This ball of light dropped down out of the sky and started floating in front of my windshield. And my first thought, it's a glowing bird. It's a golf ball. What is this? It was a ball of light about the size of a golf ball, and it was darting back and forth in front of my windshield and darted away. And once on a kind of a lonely road, a residential road, and another time on the actual freeway on the way to a UFO meeting, of all places. But I'm going to say my best sighting was this lady I was interviewed, And she was having all these encounters. Her neighbors had seen UFOs. Her friends, she was constantly seeing UFOs. I'm like, I want to see one. She says, okay, I'll arrange it. I'm like, you got to be kidding. But she calls me up. She says, okay, I telepathically talked to the ETs. We're going to go off the 210 freeway here in Pasadena to this little dirt road, and they're going to show up. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And we did it. And I went there with my sister-in-law and her son, and with this contactee, this lady. And it was just her and I because my sister-in-law and nephew got separated from us. We had just reached the end of this path, and she grabs my arm and says, look, there it is. And I'm going to tell you, 50 feet away, maybe 50 feet up, not far really at all, was this object. And it was huge. It was about the size of a house. It was a glowing sphere covered with golden lights. And one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Took my breath away. I couldn't believe it. Totally silent, hovering perfectly still, kind of posing for us for about 5 or 10 seconds, at which point it just moved leisurely away and then suddenly darted around the mountain real fast. So I'm like, wow, we saw it. I couldn't believe it.
Wow. That sounds like your best encounter.
Oh, yeah, but certainly not. She showed me another UFO later. I had another contactee also show me a UFO. So I've had people, actually take me out and see this stuff.
Wow. I've heard a few people say that it was beautiful. Like, I've even heard, Travis Walton say, or people that were with him say that, and other people just like, it's an amazing sight to see something. And I think it really is some of these objects that people have seen, like, because it's so different than what we're used to seeing. Even going back to the Phoenix Lights, talk about not everyone, but a lot of people mentioned that the lights that were below it were just this unusual, like amber orange that they'd never seen before.
Right,
So,
yeah, there's no doubt the ETs or whatever this is has an understanding of the electromagnetic spectrum that far exceeds ours, because their lights can do things by, like, levitate or heal people, or move, make solid objects invisible, or move people through solid objects. All kinds of things these lights can do.
Now, speaking of lights, do you consider, or do people consider that they're attracted to the lights of Las Vegas?
I think that's a possibility. There's a number of cases in the UFO literature where lights have attracted UFOs. I've done cases like that myself, investigated. Like, for example, this guy interviewed worked with NBC, and they were setting up these lights in the shape of a peacock's tail. And this was at the La Brea Tar Pits, the George Page Museum. Mm-hmm. And it was supposed to attract attention. It was this beautiful kind of half sphere, or three-quarter sphere. And they no sooner turned on these pitchel lights when two UFOs came swooping down to observe it.
Wow. Interesting. Now, what do you think the future is for Nevada as far as the UFOs go?
Well, I think Area 51, there's been talk, is it closed down? Is it shut down? Is it still active? It's absolutely still active, and it's getting more and more publicity. They renamed the highway outside of it the Extraterrestrial Highway. It's become a huge tourist attraction. So it's UFOs are now part of Nevada's culture. And like I said earlier, I think it's trending towards disclosure. And that's what we're going to see. More and more cases, where that can't be denied. There are cases where people actually not only see UFOs hovering over casinos, by the way, but actually inside them. And I know how that sounds, but once you start building up more than a dozen cases, you have to start scratching your head and wondering
what do you mean? What do you mean exactly? Can you just give an example?
Yeah, there's this guy who was staying at the Circus Casino, and he saw this UFO as he's walking down Las Vegas Strip. A bunch of people were looking at it. He actually took a couple of pictures, which were published in Ed Walters' book, one of his later books. And he returns to his hotel room and is getting undressed and ready to go to bed when he hears what he thinks are children thumping in the hallway outside. And then suddenly, no, they're not outside. They're in his bathroom. And he's like, well, that's strange. And so he tries to open the door, but something grabs it, and he can't open it. Finally, he wrenches it open, and it's not children. He sees gray beings, 3 feet tall, large heads, wearing shield-like uniforms, who instantly rush forward, tumble over him, and run through the walls.
Wow. Well, this is going to have to be a great story we're going to have to end on, I'm afraid. So thank you so much, Preston. It's been a real pleasure talking to you this evening.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks very much.
And real quickly, your website address, please.
Yeah, my website is my name, Preston Dennett.
All right.
So if you just Google me, that'll take you right to it.
Very good. Thanks a lot. All right, so everyone, thanks so much for listening to the show, and thanks for being a supporter or listening live. And next week we have James Fox. I'm really excited about that. I've wanted to get him on since day one. And also I want to thank Keith Rowland and for running the live portion of the show, Peggy Shunning for running the Facebook page. We'll be back here same time next week. Thanks a lot, everyone. And remember to keep your eyes to the sky.